Hello, I'm Cullen McColeman, and welcome to Historical Humans Reads, where we take primary sources and bring them to your screen. Today we are reading from Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Written in 1953, Fahrenheit 451 is a dystopian novel that depicts a near-future United States where reading books is outlawed and all written works are burned. With that, let's begin. It was a pleasure to burn. It was a special pleasure to see those things eaten, to see things blackened and changed. With the brass novel in his fists, with his great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world, the blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor, playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of history. With his symbolic helmet numbered 451 on his stolid head, and his eyes all orange flame with the thought of what came next. He flicked the igniter, and the house jumped up in a gorging fire that burned the evening sky red and yellow and black. He strode in a swarm of fireflies. He wanted above all, like the old joke, shove a marshmallow on a stick in the furnace, while the flapping pigeon-winged books died on the porch and two lawn of the house, while the books went up in sparkling whirls and blew away the wind, turned dark with burning. Montauk grinned with the fierce grin of all men singed and driven back by flame. He knew that when he returned to the firehouse, he might wink at himself, a minstrel man, burnt corked, in the mirror. Later, going to sleep, he would feel the fiery smile still gripped by his face muscles in the dark. It never went away. That smile, it never, ever went away, as long as he remembered. He hung up his black beetle-colored helmet and shined it. He hung his flame-proof jacket neatly. He showered luxuriously, and then, whistling, hands in his pockets, walked across the upper floor of the fire station and fell down the hole. At the last moment, when disaster seemed positive, he pulled out his hands from his pockets and broke his fall by grasping the golden pole. He slid to a squeaking halt, the heels 1 inch from the concrete floor downstairs. He walked out of the fire station and along the midnight street toward the subway where the silent, air-propelled train slid soundlessly down its lubricated flue in the earth and let him out with a great puff of warm air to the cream-tilled escalator rising to the suburb. Whistling, he let the escalator waft him into the still night air. He walked toward the comer, thinking little at all about nothing in particular. Before he reached the corner, however, he slowed as if a wind had sprung up from nowhere, as if someone had called his name. The last few nights, he had had the most uncertain feelings about the sidewalk just around the corner here. Moving in the starlight towards his house, he had felt that a moment prior to his making the turn, someone had been there. The air seemed charged with a special calm, as if someone had waited there, quietly, and only a moment before he came, simply turned to a shadow and let him through. Perhaps his nose detected a faint perfume. Perhaps the skin on the backs of his hands, on his face, felt the temperature rise at this one spot where a person standing might raise the immediate atmosphere 10 degrees for an instant. There was no understanding it. Each time he made the turn, he saw only the white, unused, buckling sidewalk, with perhaps, one night, something vanishing swiftly across a lawn before he could focus his eyes or speak. But now tonight, he slowed almost to a stop, his inner mind reaching out to turn the corner for him. Had he heard the faintest whisper, breathing, or was the atmosphere compressed merely by someone standing very quietly there, waiting? He turned the corner. The autumn leaves blew over the moonlit pavement in such a way as to make the girl who was moving there seem fixed to a sliding walk, letting the motion of the wind and the leaves carry her forward. Her head was half bent to watch her shoes stir the circling leaves. Her face was slender and milk white, and in it was a kind of gentle hunger that touched over everything with tireless curiosity. It was a look almost of pale surprise. The dark eyes were so fixed to the world that no move escaped them. Her dress was white and it whispered. He had almost thought he heard the motion of her hands as she walked, and the infinitely small sound now, the white stir of her face turning when she discovered she was a moment away from a man who stood in the middle of the pavement waiting. Trees overhead made a great sound of letting down their dry rain. The girl stopped, looked as if she might pull back in surprise, but instead stood regarding Montauk with the eyes so dark and shining and alive that he felt he had said something quite wonderful. But he knew his mouth had only moved to say hello. And then, when she seemed hypnotized by the salamander on his arm and the phoenix disc on his chest, he spoke again. Of course, he said, you're a new neighbor, aren't you? And you must be, she raised her eyes from his professional symbols. The fireman, her voice trailed off. How oddly you say that. I'd have known with my eyes shut, she said slowly. What the smell of kerosene. My wife always complains. He laughed. You never wash it off completely. No, you don't, she said in awe. He felt she was walking in a circle about him, turning him end for end, shaking him quietly, emptying his pockets, without once moving herself. Kerosene, he said, because the silence had lengthened, is nothing but perfume to me. Does it seem like that, really? Of course. Why not? She gave herself time to think of it. I don't know. She turned to face the sidewalk, going to their homes. Do you mind if I walk back with you? I'm Clarice McClellan. Clarice, Guy Montauk. Come along. What are you doing out wandering aloud? How old are you? They walked in the warm, cool-blowing night on the silvered pavement, and there was the faintest breath of fresh apricots and strawberries in the air. He looked around and realized this was quite impossible so late in the air. There was only the girl walking with him now, her face bright as snow in the moonlight, and he knew she was working his questions round, seeing the best answers she could possibly give. Well, she said, I'm 17 and I'm crazy. My uncle says the two always go together. When people ask your age, he said, always say 17 and insane. Isn't this a nice time of night to walk? I like to smell things and look at things, and sometimes I stay up all night, walking and watch the sunrise. They walked on again in silence, and finally she said, thoughtfully, you know, I'm not afraid of you at all. He was surprised. Why should you be? So many people are. Afraid of firemen, I mean. But you're just a man, after all. He saw himself in her eyes, suspended in two shining droplets of bright water, himself dark, tiny, in fine detail. The lines about his mouth, everything there, as if her eyes were two miraculous bits of violet amber that might capture and hold him intact. Her face, turned to him, now was fragile milk crystal with a soft, constant light in it. It was not the hysterical light of electricity, but what? But the strangely comfortable and rare and gently flattering light of the candle. One time, when he was a child, in a power failure, his mother had found and lit a last candle, and there had been a brief hour of rediscovery, of such illumination that space lost its vast dimensions and drew comfortably around them, and they, mother and son, alone transformed, hoping that the power might not come on again too soon. This has been a selection from Fahrenheit 451 on Historical Humans Reads. If you enjoyed this video and would like to hear more excerpts from original texts, please follow or subscribe to us on your platform of choice. If there is a work you would like to hear, be sure to like the video and leave a comment listing it below. Thank you for listening.